The Supreme Court saves DACA, capital murder charge for the Atlanta cop, fired for a Halloween costume 2 years ago, canceled for cracking knuckles, the Bolton book bombshells, and our $10 trillion budget coming up. All right, my friends, welcome to the Buck Sexton Show. It is an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to have you here with me. That much is for sure. It has been a tough week. It's only Thursday, but let's be honest about this one. Things are not exactly going the way many of us would want them to in the country right now. There's not a tremendous amount of positive news to celebrate, that's for sure, and some tough stuff happening. The latest one that I want to get to, although we will go in detail to the press conference yesterday from the district attorney in Atlanta, who has brought 11 charges, including a capital murder charge against former police officer Rolfe in what to me still is a justified, tragic, but justified use of force in Atlanta. We will spend considerable time on that today. And I want to start, though, with this decision from the Supreme Court. We've had a few decisions recently, and also decisions not to decide, that are very troubling. If you believe in the rule of law, if you believe the Constitution has meaning and protects all of us and is the foundational document of this polity, then you would have concerns, big ones, about what's happening now. Yesterday, we had a couple of pieces go up on bucksexton.com. And thank you so much for the wartime conservatism piece. We had in the hundreds of thousands of people read that. So thank you for that. Thank you for spreading that around. Just to give you a sense, most editorial pages of different websites, because I've written for many, many of them, a standard editorial will get 10,000 readers, 15,000 readers. We are, with that piece just on bucksexton.com, looks like we were about 10x that. So, our website, as you know, is just getting started. We are just building here in the Freedom Hut, my friends. We keep growing and doing better work and reaching more people all the time. We let our work speak for itself. We are on a mission. We're on a mission, and we certainly don't get bogged down in the petty nonsense. So, let's now focus in on this Supreme Court decision on DACA. Usually, when a court decision comes out, because there's limited time that I sometimes will have based on when we're doing the show and when it comes out, I'll read every single word of the decision, and then I'll give you my best distillation of what the arguments were, what it really means. But in this case, it's really straightforward. You don't have to waste your time. There's no reason to go too in detail. This is a very politically sensitive, very beloved program of the left, of the Democrat Party, and even a lot of fakey Republicans out there, a lot of pseudo-Republicans. They think that the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program is a good thing, needs to happen, and should not be overturned even by the executive branch that put it initially into place. Let's just do a quick review, shall we? Back in 2012, President Obama, recognizing that he was not going to get the deal, and you remember there were some Republican senators, the Gang of Eight, that wanted to go along with this, the deal for a comprehensive amnesty on illegal immigration. Right? That's what we were told. It was supposed to be a pathway to citizenship. As I have described it, it is much more a conveyor belt to citizenship, because once you give amnesty, the only thing that really happens is the amnesty. All the other things, pay back taxes, pay a fine, learn English, take a citizenship test, all that stuff doesn't happen. Oh, and then there's also the additional lawsuits, which if you go back to Reagan, that's right, St. Reagan, you go back to Reagan's amnesty, which he admitted, for anybody who wants to say, Buck, don't be too hard on Reagan. Look, you're a great man, great president, but he got swindled on amnesty. He admitted it. There's no way around it. It was very clear that he made a big mistake. And that amnesty was still being, people were still suing under Reagan's, I think it was 1986. Producer Mark fact-check me on that one in case I'm off. Reagan's 1986 amnesty, people were suing into the 2010s, claiming that they were covered under that amnesty. Okay, so once you say, oh, you were illegally in the country, we're just going to let you stay. Guess what? Everyone tries to find a way to be part of the you who gets to stay. So now we go to DACA. Oh, and that's an important concept to keep in mind, because does anyone think that DACA is really ever going to be rescinded now? Does anyone think that this is going to be something that the next administration... Yep, 1986 is correct. Thank you, producer Mark. So this is what happened. President Obama came in and said, well, I'm going to use a pen. I'm going to use a phone. I'm going to use a pen and a phone. I'm going to get it done. I'm going to go my way. That's how it's going to be. We're going to get this thing signed, and it's going to be DACA, and we're going to get it done. It's good. So we have this whole DACA program. And remember, they also wanted to do something called DAPA, Deferred Action for the Parents of the Arrivals. So after the pulling on the heartstrings that occurred to get everybody to say, well, if you were brought here illegally but through no fault of your own, and there's a sympathy for that, no question. There's a sense that this is something. Look, I'm a nice person, right? I don't know what else to say. And sometimes that can come into conflict with my sense of what is legally necessary, or I can have second thoughts about this. I could have multiple thoughts in my head at the same time. So I can understand them. There is sympathy for people that are in that situation. But just I'm trying to note for all of you that the moment that everyone started to say, okay, fine, if you really were brought here as a child, what constitutes being a child? Because do you have to prove when you were brought here? Were you really a child, or were you 19 when you were brought here, right? I mean, there are so many loopholes and holes, and the whole thing is a mess. But then they said DAPA, which is deferred action for the parents of the... So the people who brought the child illegally get to tell Americans, hey, it's not my kid's fault. Don't deport them or even keep them out of legal status. And, they should be citizens and get in-state tuition and get driver's licenses. Oh, no. Then the parents who brought the illegal child, it's like, well, you're not going to separate me from my child, obviously, so I need to be covered too. So that just means amnesty, folks, right? I mean, and now everyone's going to be a guardian of somebody, a parent of somebody who was brought here, or they're going to be a necessary component of this, or the chain migration is going to kick in. I mean, it means that everyone's going to get to stay who came here illegally. And as a society, as a country, we're going to have to face up to what has happened at some point here, which is the largest illegal migration of people in the modern era to have occurred in the Western Hemisphere. And the social and long-term political implications of that, and that it is ongoing, it's continuing, it keeps happening. I've been down to the border numerous times. I've met with Border Patrol at length. I understand what they face. And they all, I just want to note this, they all laugh at the notion that it's still 11 million illegals in this country. The people that are tasked every day with determining, with stopping people from coming into the country illegally, those individuals will tell you there's no way that the number is 11 million. Maybe 20, more like 25 probably. So I just want to note that too. But the survey, the census data that asked people, you can't even have. Pardon me, the Supreme Court swatted that down too. Can't ask a question about are you in the country illegally on the survey. Why is that? Why are Democrats so terrified of that? They say, it's going to scare illegals. No, they don't want people to know how many illegals are actually in the country. Obviously. And the pull that has, if you are illegal, let's say, and you have a family member who is legal, who is that family member who was born in this country and therefore has been granted citizenship? And there is the whole anchor baby thing that Trump has talked about. And he has taken no action on that whatsoever. I'm a little bit frustrated with Trump this week. Folks, I tell you the truth. But the anchor baby situation has not been addressed by Trump. Immigration has not been meaningfully addressed by Trump or the Republicans in Congress. And now we get to the one thing that has been done here. What I was saying before is just that there's a political pull to the left and the Democrats that occurs through legal immigration, even if illegals can't vote, which legally they can't. Do some of them through fraud. We don't have the data, but it seems likely given the motor voter registration where you just go to the DMV, you can get a license even if you're illegal, but they register people anyway. So the one thing Trump did, the one thing that the president did, on immigration was rescind Obama's executive order on DACA. And this is very straightforward. Obama says, I'm going to use my prosecutorial authority, in a sense, my executive discretion to grant these rights to these individuals because I can't, through fiat, grant them citizenship. Only Congress can do that. But I'm going to give them these rights under a flatly unconstitutional reading of what the president can do in the first place. So Obama takes an unconstitutional action to grant special rights under executive order. In this case, it's really a form of like a prosecutorial discretion. Don't worry, we promise we're not going to prosecute you, and we promise we'll let you work if you come tell the federal government the following things. If you come and register under the program. That was the bargain that was made. Trump comes along and says, okay, well, that was that president. He did something unconstitutional. Obama did something lawless with DACA. I'm now the president. Speaking from Trump's perspective, sorry, I haven't run and won the election yet, guys, but I'm working on it. I am not bound by what my predecessor did here. That was merely an exercise of discretion. So I must, therefore, have the discretion to undo what my predecessor chose to do, right? If he can make the decision, yes, I can make the decision, no. It's like if one president vetoes a piece of legislation and then the next president with the same legislation put in front of him signs it, that's the president's right. That's the president's prerogative. It's no different. No different. This could not be a more straightforward exercise of presidential authority, presidential power. And yet, in a 5-4 decision, John Roberts selling out the Constitution again. I mean, I made a joke today on Twitter. The Federalist Society is going to have to learn to code because, man, they gave us some really crappy judges. And I don't want to tell you some of the people who were enormous, not just proponents of, but were pointed to as the luminaries of the conservative legal movement. They're people that some of you like who are saying, this judge I know will be fantastic. Trust me, guys, this is the judge you want with Roberts. Roberts is a disaster. He's a disaster because it's almost like having a never Trumper on the Supreme Court, right? Someone whose only job is to pretend to be one thing while always helping the other side. Congrats, Justice Roberts. Constantly doing violence to the Constitution and undoing the very legal order that is supposed to be, his life's work to protect. But they came along, and who wants to guess what they claim is the reason for preventing the president from using his discretion to undo this deferred action for illegals? It is the Administrative Procedures Act. They are claiming that it is capricious. It is capricious for the president to do this. That it is not within his power merely because they don't think he has justified it well enough. Now, I want to know, arbitrary and capricious is the term of art that's used. I want to note this for all of you. Under this standard of arbitrary and capricious, the Supreme Court could overturn anything that the president does, right? Can the president deploy U.S. military to deal with a crisis somewhere, under the authorities that he has as commander-in-chief? Oh, I don't know. It's kind of arbitrary and capricious. What is the president? Can the president, through executive order, rename a post office? Oh, no, he can't call that post office, whatever he wants, because that's arbitrary and capricious. The libs here have asserted a legal standard that they can always use to undo anything because you know what is really arbitrary and capricious? Calling things you don't like arbitrary and capricious, folks. That's right. Yeah, I know you're allowed to decide what we're having for dinner tonight. It's hamburgers or hot dogs, but I know you have that right. But your choice of hamburger is just a little too capricious for me. I don't feel like you have enough of a justification, so I'm not going to let you make the choice for dinner. Do you still have are you still making the choice about dinner then, or has that been taken from you? How do you overcome the standard that's arbitrary and capricious? You don't. You don't. There's no point in even getting into the details. It doesn't matter. The president has the right to do this. For any reason or no reason, he can choose to undo this executive order beforehand. That's his power. The Supreme Court doesn't have that power, but they've taken it upon themselves now. This conservative, allegedly leaning Supreme Court has given us some of the worst judicial travesties of my lifetime in just the last week. So for all those people who are claiming, oh, that's right, don't worry, we're going to get the judges in there and that's going to make everything better. No, it's not. No, it's not. There is no get out of jail free card for the right here. There is no final bastion of defense, of sanity, of constitutionalism if you can't win. Today is really a reminder for all of us, and in a sense, it's just adding to the rallying cry that I'm trying to get going with all of you, that we need to win. We need to mobilize, and we need to push for what we believe. Just getting judges is not going to cut it.
Joy, you were, I'm told, in shock.
I was shocked, and I say bravo, Neil Gorsuch. And there's hope for America. I feel much better today about the whole situation. But, what a disappointment this must be for the Trump base. I mean, they overlooked Stormy Daniels. They overlooked grabbing by the genitals remarks. They overlooked making fun of the handicapped. They overlooked locking children up, taking them away from their parents, all for the Supreme Court. And now this is the thanks they get. I'm sure they are not happy today. And may I just say one more thing? Alito and Kavanaugh, particularly Judge Thomas, should hang his head in shame.
There you go. Noted legal scholar Joy Behar. Unfortunately, there's some truth to what she says about Gorsuch getting a big high five from the left. Oh, yeah. I'm sure they're going to be really nice to him for about a week. Good job, Neil. Well done. But if you weren't worried enough about the Constitution and the future of liberty in this country, Joy Behar is thinking that things are going great. She is very pleased with these. I'm sure she loves the DACA decision today, too. Noted legal and jurisprudence scholar, Madame Behar. She thinks this is great. All the leftists think this is great. My friends, the left is ascendant. We can either admit this or not, but we are not winning right now. Do we want to win? I am not tired of winning because we have not been winning. So let's turn this thing around, folks. Let's all do our part. As I have been saying, it is a bad week for justice, for the rule of law, for the Constitution, and with all of that, for the country. I cannot sugarcoat it. I'm not here to pretend things are good. You know this. When things were good, I was telling you. And, I could drive up ratings and, I know the whole thing, It's terrible what's happening. I mean, I can do that, too. But it's much better to just speak honestly to the people that you love and respect, that comprise your listeners, your team, your audience. And I've always done that. You can go back and play the tape. 6 months ago, 8 months ago, I was saying, guys, things are great. We're winning. Comedy's great. Enjoy it. We still have fights. We're still in the game. But, let's, take a nice long victory lap with yourself this weekend, because we're going to be back. We're going to be back in the trenches before you know it. Now we're in the trenches and we're taking incoming. Okay. We're no longer in the happy times. Politically speaking, we have really been hit with a bit of a blitzkrieg recently. This has been bad. And now we have these lawless decisions. I mean, the LGBTQ decision that came down will effectively destroy religious liberty and free speech over time. I mean, those things will no longer exist in this country. You're going to have to bend that knee, bake that cake, and beg for forgiveness if you so much as raise any hint of, hey, is transgenderism among the youth? based on the studies that have been done, it's contagious in that people who become transgender at a very young age, other people around them become transgender as well, in a way that statistically is not possible unless you assume that there are people who see this and see the attention from it who are very young and very impressionable and therefore adopt similar positions. This is what the peer-reviewed science, until it gets pulled, which it has been, says about that. If you even bring that up now or going forward, you are going to be told you're a bad person, you're a bigot, and let's make sure that we have surgeries to remove healthy breast tissue and fully functional male genitalia. That's anyone who questions that is the equivalent of a KKK member. That's coming your way. Cutting off healthy genitals because of a psychological condition, which is what, remember, this is not based in genetics. This is not based in biology. This is, we're told, this is an emotional state. The federal government has now taken the position that this is a protected class, and if you don't adhere to all aspects of that protected class's ideology, you will be sued. You will be in trouble. That's now where, just wait, you'll see. I've been saying it. I've been telling you all this is coming. The insanity and rapacious authoritarianism of the left has actually been accelerating. It's been getting worse in recent years, in recent decades. Trump pushed back some of it, but now it feels like there's been even a backlash to Trump that we are suffering through. And I'm not going to tell you that I think the president has been an effective warrior for his own cause in recent weeks, because he has not. He has not been. And I do not know what's going on, although I do understand that there are some advisors around him who are just, they don't understand, or they do understand and they're worried about what happens to them after a Trump presidency. What kind of board seats, what kind of reputations will they carry with them into the elite circles that they will want to be accepted in? This is certainly the case with Justice Roberts. I mean, Justice Roberts wants to make sure that his kids get to go to Harvard and then Yale Law, and their kids' kids and kids will get to go to Harvard and Yale Law. And Roberts is doing enough for the left that will happen. He will be able to point to, see what Roberts hath given to the left. Not enough that they love him, but enough that they will take care of him. Enough that he will be allowed. You watch and see. His kids will all, I mean, I don't know where they are. I don't know how many kids he has, but, his name and his family going forward will always be among the elite. Always be among the elite. But so these things are going against us right now, and this is very concerning. And then you also have this lawlessness via the Democrat Party, and we should always maintain the truth here, and that is the Democrat Party is behind. It is the Democrats rioting, the Democrats looting. These are Democrats doing all of these things. And if Republicans did any of this, it is all you would hear about, not for the days it happens, for weeks and months going forward. So now that brings me to this Rayshard Brooks case. I've given you my analysis based on the video, and I've told you what I think about what's happening here. I watched this press conference live yesterday as it happened, as the district attorney was sounding like he was the attorney for the family of Rayshard Brooks. I mean, he did not sound like a DA. He sounded like somebody. This is Paul Howard, who is the DA in this case. He sounded like someone who had been hired to be the lawyer for the Brooks family, the Brooks estate. That's how completely out of line it was. He referred to Mr. Brooks, and we have substantial video and all the angles. There's many different cameras. The body cameras are on. There's over 40 minutes of video. He referred to Mr. Brooks as cooperative. He referred to Mr. Brooks as jovial, which I thought was a particularly interesting word to use, and cited how in the 40 minutes or so up to the scuffle, but didn't even really frame it this way, but in those 40 minutes, he was doing what he thought needed to be done. He was being reasonable and friendly with the cops and nothing really bad. Presented no threat. That's the verbiage that was used here. That's what we were told about this. And a lot of us sat there. I myself was sitting there as Paul Howard was making what was effectively a case built on misrepresentations and falsehoods, and then said that it was going to be 11 counts against Officer Rolfe, including a felony murder count for which the officer could receive the death penalty. That's right. This cop in Atlanta was serving his community, showed no animus whatsoever to the suspect. He was a suspect in a DUI case. He was also out on parole for felony domestic abuse, including abuse of a child. I'm sure now you're going to see a lot of T-shirts with his face on them, though. He's a hero. Yes, he wrestled cops to the ground. Yes, he stole their taser. On what did the district attorney, Paul Howard, what did he say? Oh, he's up for re-election soon, isn't he? And he's somebody who's clearly a Democrat. What did he say was the truth of tasers as recently as 2 weeks ago? Play clip 1, please.
And charged with aggravated assault of Ms. Pilgrim, and this is for pointing a taser at Mrs. Pilgrim. And as many of you all know, under Georgia law, a taser is considered as a deadly weapon under Georgia law.
A taser is considered a deadly weapon under Georgia law. Now, that's fascinating to me. That's fascinating to me because we were told very clearly, we were told without any hesitation that there was no threat. In fact, here was the district attorney in the press conference yesterday.
But Mr. Brooks never displayed any aggressive behavior during the 41 minutes and 17 seconds. Now, this is another important...
Never displayed aggressive behavior, except when he wrestled 2 cops to the ground, took a weapon which that DA said 2 weeks ago is a lethal weapon under Georgia law, and guess what? It is. And then used it on the officers as he was running from them. Well, why would you just say that he never displayed aggressive tendencies? Why would that even matter? If he had displayed some aggressive tendencies leading up to the incident, the actual fighting, the wrestling on the ground, which Bro Cuomo said showed bad technique. Yeah, a real tough guy. It's easy to be getting paid millions to sit in a fancy CNN studio and read words that other people write for you, and then talk about how you're like a real tough guy that would know exactly how to wrestle an assailant to the ground at night, in the dark, on the street, where you don't know what's going on. But I digress. The DA even went further than that. Described Brooks as cooperative throughout.
At the beginning, he was peacefully sleeping in his car. After he was awakened by the officer, he was cooperative, and he was directed to move his car to another location. He calmly moved his car. Mr. Brooks was asked whether or not he had a weapon. He indicated that he did not. Without any resistance, he passed his driver's license to the officers, and the officers then asked Mr. Brooks whether or not he would consent to a pat-down or a body search, and Mr. Brooks allowed them to search him, and the search yielded no weapon.
So I guess there was no problem, right? I mean, the way this guy's talking about it, the way this DA Paul Howard's describing the exchange, Mr. Brooks here, the deceased, was completely doing everything that he was supposed to do. No problem, no threat. Peacefully sleeping in his car. That was the quote. That's what the DA says in Atlanta about a man who had driven so drunk to a drive-thru that he fell asleep in active traffic while out on parole for other crimes. Did you get any of that sense from this? Did you get any inclination that there was perhaps some problem that Rayshard Brooks was posing? No, he was fine. He was great. He's a model citizen up until the big bad mean, and then they implied racist cop shot him. Said that afterwards, after he was shot, they stood on his shoulder or his arm for a second. He had a taser in his hands. They just had a violent exchange. People's adrenaline is absolutely firing. And that sounds bad, right? You say, why would he kick him afterwards? Maybe he was nudging him with his foot, kicking with his foot, call it whatever you want, to see if, he was still, you don't know if you've hit this guy really yet. You don't know where he's been hit. So easy to be the perfect Monday morning quarterback on this, especially with the political pressures, which we all know right now. I mean, this cop is being fed to the mob. And they might try to put a bag over his head and a lethal injection in his arm for serving his community. That's right. That's what they're going to do to this cop. It's appalling. It's disgusting what they're doing. And if you're not, just the way they even broke down. Let me come back and tell you a little bit about some of the charges that they threw at the cops here, including the felony murder charge, which could send him to a lethal injection. $11 criminal charges against Officer Rolfe. The other officer, Brosnan, who's involved in this, has turned state's evidence, which is not surprising because he probably doesn't want to spend the rest of his life in prison to placate the mob. So while I'd like to think that he would stand up for his partner here, they bring this kind of pressure against you. It's very difficult to be the one that, you're asking. A lot of people won't stand on principle when their entire future, their entire life hangs in the balance. We can't even get people to stand on principle if, it means they might lose a few stations and, not make 10 million this year, maybe only 5. But here is one of the examples of what the DA thinks is a big problem. And one of the charges, they hit Officer Rolfe with numerous professional misconduct charges like this.
Informed that he was under arrest for driving under the influence. And this is a requirement of the Atlanta Police Department. When one is charged with DUI, the Atlanta Police Department's own procedures require that that person is informed immediately that they are under arrest. And then he was grabbed from the rear by Officer Rolfe, who made an attempt to physically restrain him after the 41-minute and 17-second discussion. We concluded and considered it as one of our important considerations that Mr. Brooks never presented himself as a threat.
Never presented himself as a threat. I'm just going to go out on a limb here. Despite what the DA here, Paul Howard, is saying, if I were a cop and someone, when I tried to very calmly and professionally handcuff them to place them under arrest, Brooks has been arrested before, folks. He knows the drill. He says he didn't tell him he was being placed under arrest. The second he grabbed his hands to put him under arrest, he was about to say, I'm sure, sir, you're under arrest. Then Brooks started fighting right away. You're talking about a 1 or 2 second delay. They're charging him under professional misconduct for that. They're charging Officer Rolfe with destruction of property because one of the bullets that he fired at Brooks hit a car. So the 11 counts here, they went through this exchange and gave Rolfe not a single benefit of the doubt, not a single, nothing. Everything that they could conceivably charge. I'm a little surprised they didn't charge Officer Rolfe with violating the Administrative Procedures Act. That's the only thing I can think of that they left out here. And, They got to get him on that one, too. Yesterday was when watching the justice system work. I mean, yesterday was one of the ugliest moments I can remember in my life, in terms of a injustice happening right before you. I mean, it reminded me of Kavanaugh and how they went after him and feeling helpless to do anything about it. You know, it reminded me of Mueller and his team charging General Flynn. It reminded me of the OJ verdict